I'm Kevin Mims with the Invading Sea, a Florida-wide media collaborative that reports on climate change in the state. As part of that effort, we started The Business of Climate Change, a weekly interview with businessmen and women whose companies are either affected by the warming climate or address climate challenges. Today's conversation is with Ken LaRoe, founder of First Green Bank and founder and chairman and CEO of Climate First Bank, which is scheduled to open June 1st in St. Petersburg. Ken, thanks for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ken, tell me a little bit about Climate First Bank, why you started it, and what makes it different from other banks.
Well, that's a great question, and probably the $64,000 question. After selling First Green Bank, which we started in 2009 and sold in 2018, it just really broke my heart, broke my coworkers' hearts, the community's hearts, the customers' hearts. We were doing such great work and had such a great bank. And my wife and I got a little mini motorhome and we circumnavigated the country and did a ton of soul searching as to whether I should do something again, and had pretty much talked myself out of it, thinking, well, I'm too old. What am I doing starting a third bank in my career? And finally she said, look, Kenny, you want to do this, it's in your heart, it's your passion. You just need to do it. And so that was the impetus that really got me off a dead center and decided to do it. And my best friend came up with the name Climate First Bank, and Cindy came up with the logo at her dining table. And I had a whole bunch of people early on tell me, why that name? That's so divisive. It's so political. It's going to impair your ability to raise capital. And I said, no, that's what it's going to be. We're going to draw a line in the sand right up front. If somebody doesn't want to invest because of the name, then we don't really want them as investors. This is the existential challenge of humanity, as we all agree, especially anyone that's listening to your program. And so I felt like I had to try to do something to make a difference and make a bunch of people a bunch of money. I consider myself a rabid capitalist, but I'm also a rabid environmentalist. And I think the two have to go hand in hand. So the premise was, what can we do to actually make a difference? And when I thought about, well, our buildings are all going to be LEED certified. They're going to be covered with solar. We're going to be net zero. We're going to be paperless. Well, big deal. That's just a flea on the back of an elephant, in the big scheme of making a difference. So I happened to be concurrently reading the book Drawdown, and the light bulb went off. And it's like, oh my God, this is it. There's 100 initiatives in this book that can be done today. And what I need to do is go through those initiatives, figure out what a community bank can actually affect, and then design programs and services around those initiatives. And so that's what I did. There were 12 of them, and it's everything from the obvious rooftop solar, which we did really, really well at First Green, but we want to do even better at Climate First at scale and, large volumes. We want to be people to drive into the state of Florida and go, oh my God, where did all the solar come from on these rooftops? Well, there's this cool little bank based in St. Pete that's doing this great loan for people. So I actually wrote it into the business plan that we submitted to the regulators that was going to be our initiatives. And the beauty of it is it can pretty readily be tracked. Every 10 kW system that you put on a roof, how much atmospheric CO2 you're not contributing to or drawing down. And it'll help us. We're going to try to establish the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and start tracking them. Day one for us, for everything we produce, and our coworkers and all that, and then just start through the vendors, start through the customers. So that probably answers the big picture question you asked of what makes us different. But there's a couple other things too, though. We're going to be the first legal benefit corporation bank in the state of Florida, and I think the first legal benefit corporation bank in the southeastern United States. We will, of course, seek B Lab's B Corp certification. We'll seek to join the Global Alliance for Banking on Values, all of that, those other metrics that are so important. But yeah.
So you're from Central Florida, and Climate First Bank is headquartered in St. Petersburg. What kind of climate-related changes have you witnessed there, and what environmental issues are most concerning to you?
Well, but I mean, everywhere, right? At First Green, we had actually stopped lending to homeowners that wanted to purchase a home on the water. And there were a number of other lenders that did the same thing. And I think that's going to continue to happen throughout the state of Florida. But what I experience in Central Florida, and I live right in the middle of the state, is just the oppressive heat that we never had before. And I live 4 miles from my 83-year-old dad. He lives in the house that he grew up in, that I grew up in. And our family has been here since the early 20s. And every year Dad says, this is terrible. I've never, ever experienced anything like this in my life. And the species change that I see going on around us, birds that I've never seen before, birds that used to be here that aren't anymore, insects that I've never seen, all of that. But I had an epiphany a couple of years ago. I was in Amsterdam, and the whole defenses against the sea thing there, and they've been doing it 400 years and really have it down. And I read that they were going to spend $1 billion a year for the next 20 years to bolster their defenses against the sea. So the light bulb went off, and I thought, oh my God, how long is the coastline of the Netherlands? And I Googled it, and it's something like 280 miles. So it's 280 miles. They're spending $1 billion a year for 20 years. So I Googled, how long is the coastline of Florida? Well, it's 1,300 miles. And we haven't even started talking about the fact that it's happening. and our governor is denying that there is a climate crisis. So, what do? Do we just wake up one day when the waves are lapping at the front door of, I don't know, a house in Zellwood or something, and then they can't build a seawall in Miami and not build one in Lauderdale. And then plus the fact that if you build a seawall, it's all limestone. It's just going to bubble up behind the seawall anyway. So it beats the devil out of me. I mean,
Got it. So banking probably isn't the first industry that comes to mind for most people when they think of climate action and sustainability. How are they connected?
Well, you're right. I mean, nobody thinks of banking in that context at all. But there is a huge ESG movement, but for the millennials, like my daughter and the Zoomers, they get it and they're willing to vote with their pocketbook. But the really important thing is finance is an extremely powerful tool. And you can do extreme amounts of good and extreme amounts of bad. If the pressure would get ramped up on Bank of America and Chase and Citi to stop lending to dirty energy, and I've read opinions and articles that, well, if you deny bank funding, then the market will backfill. Private equity funds will flow in. Yeah, they'll flow in at 4 times the interest rate. It changes the economics instantly if banks don't finance stuff. And I'm one of our mottos is changing finance to finance change, and it touches everything. I mean, it absolutely touches everything.
On that, that kind of goes right into the next question. What changes are needed in the banking industry as we as a society try to combat the effects of climate change and sea level rise?
Well, there for sure needs to be a negative filter. Bankers need to wake up and stop financing evil, whether it's for-profit prisons, industrial agriculture or dirty energy. The other thing that needs to happen is bankers, especially at the community bank level, need to stop saying that, well, because they're a member of the Rotary Club, they're actually contributing to their community. That is not contributing to their community, and that's not putting their money where their mouth is. The other thing is political activism, and the status quo of bankers supporting Republicans and right-wing causes has got to end. There needs to be a capitalist reformation, and banks can certainly be take the lead in that.
So, how can consumers make their banking more climate friendly?
Bank with us or a bank that's a member of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. Or even most bankers would just shudder at this comment. Bank with one of the neobanks that aren't really banks, and I need to point that out. They're not really banks; they're just aggregators. But I don't view them as competition. I view them as collaborators. And there's some really good code coming out of the neobanks, or challenger banks as they're called in the U.S. But there's good stuff coming out of there, and those people, a lot of them, their heart's in the right place. And we've all heard of Aspiration, and there's a new one, Atmos, that's popping up in the Bay Area in San Francisco. That's just it means atmosphere. They're committed strictly to the climate crisis. Good friends of ours, and so there's good stuff coming out there. But pretty much you gotta stop banking with the big banks. They may be talking the talk, but they ain't walking the walk.
So, how can the Florida Legislature, or what can the Florida Legislature do to support a greener financial services industry?
Like they've been doing with us, and they've really been encouraging our charter and the benefit corporation aspect of it. Possibly provide some benefit that goes with the benefit status. I don't know what that might be, whether it's a tax benefit or something. It'd be much better to be giving tax breaks to companies that are doing good, as opposed to the utilities or dirty energy or whatever. I don't know. I hadn't given that question a lot of thought, but there certainly are a number of ways they could.
Ken, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. That was awesome.